Hello there. Hello, hello. This is I'm going to say the answers. These are some answers or some responses to the questions that came in after the Intuition 1 video 2, which was the Rose, the Trumpet, and the Hot Day, came out. So people wrote. There were lots of interesting questions. So I picked 20 here, I think 20 of them maybe. And they are representative of questions that a lot of people asked. Okay, so we're just going to go through them. The first one was from Nikki, and she said, "My intuition tells me that I no longer need to acquiesce to the money pilfering law ideologies, taxes, road tolls, the rules that don't support no harm, injury, or loss." So rules that actually do support harm, injury, and loss, and don't support, the ways that we can avoid harm, injury, and loss. As a mother of 3 young children, the fear can envelop my family, especially in Australia. Do you see a way we can challenge these laws without bringing harm or loss to the family? So I'm going to say something that, I'll say several somethings that have to do with the appropriateness of what we're talking about here. This question really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the intuition exercise that we just did. So this is a personal question. And Nikki, this is something that I'm hoping you'll learn to answer for yourself. This is a question that is common sense oriented. If there's laws out there, taxes, road tolls, rules that are harmful or, that are not good, they support loss or hurtfulness, injury, etc. Those are still laws. You have to decide, whether you can ignore those laws and the consequences they bring. Most times you can't. Common sense would say, I don't like these. With 3 young children, you probably don't have a whole lot of time to get involved in changing laws in the legal system, in the political system. But this is not something that I can say, oh, yeah, just ignore that law. That doesn't make any sense. You would end up in trouble. So this is when you get a question like this, when something like this comes in, this is not intuition. This is common sense. Okay. So yes, some people might tell you, okay, yeah, you can ignore that, but that's not what I'm going to tell you, because I've tried that sort of thing when I was younger and a little bit more, thought I could get away with stuff. It doesn't work. It only hurts you and your family. So for now, raise your children, do your best. If you get a chance to have an invoice if you get a chance to have some input into the changing of those rules and taxes and tolls, etc., then do it. Okay. Thank you, Nikki. The next one is Scouting for Crypto, 9855. And he says, I suffer from severe nerve pain, and the only way I can sleep is cannabis edibles. I haven't had a dream in 3 years since I started. It's a documented side effect. What can I do about this? This is not an intuition question either. This is a medical, personal, I need help kind of question. In terms of, that's not what this class is for. It's not to answer personal questions from somebody who happens to be intuitive. But what I will say is this, that severe nerve pain, if cannabis edibles help, then that's the choice you have to make. Are the dreams more important, or is a pain-free life more important? I would say at this point, the pain-free life is pretty important. Okay? Do that first. The fact that you're losing your dreams or you don't have access to your dreams anymore, that's too bad for the moment. However, there are things you can do to heal. You might want to study up or learn or, find a doctor who can really explain why you have nerve pain. It's probably because the microbiome, your gut is messed up. So, okay, good luck there scouting for crypto. The next one is a question from Michelle, and she wrote a small book here, and I'm just going to pick out the question at the very end of the book. She says, I bought your book, Robes. I am so intrigued. I'm halfway through it and have so many things I would love to pick your mind about. So, okay. I have had some deep inner experiences that left me timeless, disoriented, and in like a dream state for weeks, sometimes with downloads of information with pictures and experiences. I found that if I open all the doors within, I can allow the information to go through me. It's one of the most miraculous experiences I have ever experienced. Is that what you call a Kundalini? She says, I can't spell it. That's okay. I knew what you meant. I call it a holy instant, even though it can last for days. Keep teaching because you have a way to open minds, and open minds is how to get there. So the question is that Kundalini? The technical definition of Kundalini is the awakening of consciousness. So when you have something like this, where you get into an altered state and you feel like you're in a timeless world and you're not really concerned about what's happening here, that's a disorientation. That is a common thing in the early days of awakening consciousness. To awaken consciousness, you expand the number of frequencies that you can access and interpret. Okay? The kinds of Kundalini awakenings that I have been familiar with over the years, there's my own, which was very spontaneous and very explosive and very sexual and very difficult to deal with. There are others where people suddenly walk through a door, lock eyes with somebody, and in that moment, they enter into the timeless realm of connection with another human being. And that changes everything. When you enter that timelessness with another human, you have just expanded your consciousness. In a sense, that is one of the what I call the small awakening steps that Kundalini often provides for us. Consciousness is best if it wakes up a little at a time, let me tell you. So that I have to agree. In fact, I had to laugh. She says here, downloads of information with pictures and experiences would just come in. That was one of the things that I found was also miraculous. Information just comes. It just, anything you want to know and anything you didn't even know you wanted to know is right there at your fingertips. So just be aware, Michelle, that is a sign that consciousness is awakening, and that's wonderful. Okay, yes, there are downloads. After a while, you learn to go after information. And you can get answers to almost anything you want, or at least insight. Okay? So keep allowing that information to go through you, yes. And I will say this, the more that you work on yourself to remove your biases and your prejudices and all your old angers and old ideas about how life should be, the more you open those inner doors and that information just flows through unimpeded. That information is always flowing through. But if you're full of biases, prejudices, angers, and rigid thinking, then that information is going to get twisted and colored by your biases. And it's going to not be very helpful. Okay? So good question, Michelle. Next, we have a question from Stand for Truth, 2734. And Stand for Truth says, could you give me the first book you would recommend for reading? Several others have asked as well. Yes, I did. I do have a reading list that usually comes with a live class. The first book I would recommend, I have to say, is my own book, The Evolving Human. It's available on Amazon, or you can download it if you want to, something on your to read on your iPad. You can read the digital form, but it talks about what actually happens during a full awakening. It's nothing. It's not an easy process. At so many levels. You have to be courageous. You have to be patient. You have to be honest. Oh my gosh, there's so many things. So that's the first one. The Evolving Human tells my story of what I experienced as I opened and then continued to open, and the difficulties that I ran into because of that. The second book that I would recommend is the first book that I read, and it's called Kundalini, The Evolutionary Energy in Man. And it's by Gopi Krishna, Gopi, Krishna, Krishna. He also had the same kind of spontaneous, kind of explosive, very sexual experience of Kundalini, and struggled with that for his whole life. He integrated it, but you have to change. It changes everything about you. The third book that I would recommend is by Hank Wesselman. Hank I think Hank is no longer with us. He was a professor of archaeology at University of California, maybe, something like that. He had a number of Kundalini experiences. He discusses in his book, Spirit Walker, his first experience, what he went through, the fact that it was tied to sexuality. That's an aspect that nobody ever talks about. Every so often I tell John Claude, let's do a class on why is there sex? Because sex is not what people think it is. Okay? But those 3 books would get you started. And there may be others that people will suggest in the comments. So kind of keep an eye out for some of those. But those first 3 are very, very informative. Okay. Next, we have a question from Jenny McCloskey. And she says, oh well. It's not a question. She's just saying, tell John Claude to mention my website, pennykelly.com, or my YouTube channel, Penny Kelly Official, Penny Kelly _official. So yeah, we're creating a playlist on my YouTube channel. So you can go there and check for these. Each time we release a video. There's 12 videos in the Intuition 1 class. And each time we release, we're going to pick up questions from the comments. So put your comments in YouTube or write to info. And we are going to go through those comments and pick up the questions. And then I will come back and answer those questions in a video like this and put those on the playlist. So there'll be a video and then, kind of a Q&A session that I'll do after that. So that playlist will be on Penny Kelly _official, okay, on YouTube. Then next we have a question from Dior 17. And Dior asks, what if I'm strong in visual, feeling, and hearing? What if I did all three equally? That's a good thing, Dior. That indicates that you have developed all of your senses, and that is going to be much more helpful in the long run with intuition, because some messages come in visually, some come in auditorially, and some come in feeling wide. Okay? So that's congratulations. That's a good thing. Joey G or Joey JJ is the next question. And he says, would there be any harm in my slowing down the playback speed? No, there wouldn't be any harm in that. But once you get to be much more flexible in your, what I call the screens in your mind, once you become, typically people, I go very fast on purpose in the exercises. And that's because I don't want your mind wandering off and building storylines that are totally useless. Everybody builds stories. I want the raw data. Okay. And by going fast, you get the raw data. You don't have time to think about what should I see as a bird? What color should I see? It just boom comes. Okay, got to move on. Next. Okay, that's on purpose. So you can slow it down, and that will teach you maybe to be more flexible. But I'm not going to slow down. Once you get to the point where you feel you're pretty flexible with your envisioning, your imagination, okay, then speed it back up and see if you can keep up. Okay. Next, we have somebody, no name here. It just is a question. What do you tell people who don't see anything? I can't imagine during the guided meditation exercises, etc. So here's somebody who went through the exercise and didn't see anything. Okay. So that what that says is you're not visual. Did you hear? Were you able to hear any answers? Were you able to hear the brook, the creek? Were you able to hear the gunshot or the thunder? If you were, then you are primarily auditory. And what about feeling? Could you feel the heat, that infrared heat, the campfire, the cold? If so, then you're primarily kinesthetic. Okay. Feeling is primary. Hearing develops later, and visual is even after that. So it's nice if they all develop together. But a lot of children shut down their vision because what they see in the world is too painful. The ones who shut down their hearing, it's because what they hear is too painful. So, but you can't shut down feeling. Feeling lets you know you are alive. Okay. Okay. So, and the other thing I would say, what do I tell people who don't see anything? Just keep practicing. Try to dig up a memory. A lot of people say, well, I had a memory of, I was over here. I just went to this lake. What I was seeing was that lake. That's still valid. That's you imagining the lake is there. You just saw it last week physically, but you're not there anymore. You're doing this exercise. That's your imagination. That's your visual imagination. It's working. Okay. Katrian Hansen says, what does our true age tell about us? Someone once told me I'm a young soul. The number I got is rather small. Could you expand on what this age implies? It doesn't feel like I'm a young soul, and I remember past lives in ancient civilizations. So I wonder how we have to look at that. Thank you for expanding on this. So, Katrian, what that number means, it's typically, and I didn't give any parameters on purpose, but typically that number is going to indicate your developmental age in terms of your consciousness. Okay. So if you were, the numbers are from 1 to 9. If you got a 244 or 5,600,000 or whatever, then that the number 1 to 9 was telepathically broadcast. You're not listening telepathically yet if you got 200 or 500 or a million or whatever. But if you got a 1, that says that you're at the beginning stages of developing consciousness. If you got a 5, you're in the middle. If you got a 7, you're actually pretty good. You're a sage. If you got a 10, you're an enlightened master. Okay. So that's what that number is. And you can be a very old soul and come into this life and not have the opportunity to develop consciousness. You'll bring some of that wisdom with you, but maybe not all of it. And every time you start a life over, it's risky business. Parents don't always work out. Siblings don't always work out. Yeah, it can be risky. So that age is just to give you a clue of how far you are on the developmental line. Okay, good question. Liz D 8701 says, this is good. I don't understand why I chose some answer to my imagination, as they were not my favorite, but it was the first thing that came to mind. Yes, that's what I want, is the first thing that comes to mind is your intuition, your inner self, talking to you, telling you, sharing information with you about you. Okay? So that you may have talked yourself into loving this. My kids used to say to me, "Who's your favorite, Mom?" And I would say, whoever's behaving today, whoever gets their chores done first. That's my favorite today. So it changed. The criteria changed all the time. We change all the time, but we can have a favorite color. Often it's a fad going around. And then our favorite color shifts 5 or 6 years later. So that answer that came into your imagination, boom, 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 that's your true self talking. That's your real self telling you something about you that you didn't know. And you need to know. You need to know yourself. So that's a very good question. And yes, it makes a difference. Now, what often happens is people do this exercise, they go back and do it again. They think they're going to have a chance to pick what they want, but they find that the more they do it, the more different answers come in. It's kind of bad English, the more different, but that's okay. What you begin to see is how you change over time. And the time doesn't have to be a long time either. Okay? So, good question, Liz. Sid Burton, 5183, says, what is your future self saying? She says, I saw an ad. Is the ad a message from my future self? You didn't say, Sid, what the ad was about. Was it a toothpaste ad? Was it a car ad? Was it, some kind of clothing? Was it something, what was the ad for? That's the true message. Okay. So, and yeah, it's a message from your future self. And what is an ad all by itself? It's an attempt to open you up to something, to open your consciousness, to open your awareness. When somebody's trying to sell you toothpaste, they let you know, hey, this toothpaste is out there and it's available and you can get it from so-and-so, and and it does all this magic for your teeth. So they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to make you aware that this toothpaste is available. So whatever that ad was telling you, it was trying to make you aware of something. And usually that's going to come down, because this is the future self, that's going to come down to you having to make a choice about something down the road. Okay? Good question. Adele C3X says, I did not receive any messages. I'm not sure what this means. Should I do it again? Yeah, I think, Adele, you didn't say whether you got the color or the bird, or any of that. But when you don't hear any messages, sometimes you're not very auditory. And the reason you want to know that is because as you go through life and you're dealing with people, if you're not really hearing what they're saying, it makes for all kinds of problems, misunderstandings, disappointments, disillusionments. Learning to listen and really listen, that's a big deal. So that would be the first thing I would say. If you didn't receive any messages, you have not learned to listen. I think you should do it again and again until you get a message. Okay? It'll come. So, okay. Then we have Vi Karnek asked the next question. She said, when you said picture a number, my mind automatically went to a single digit number between 1 and 9, even though you didn't say that. Oh, yes, I did. I said that telepathically when I put that video out there. So she says, you may be right that I'm a young up and coming soul, but I really don't think so. I've had memories of past lives, and psychics and intuitives talk with me about my past lives. I would be interested in your comments then as to what that's about. Why did my mind or some part of me assume 1 to 9, a number between 1 and 9? Vi, that's because you're telepathic. You got the message. You need to understand, I think this may be not just for you, Vi, but for everybody. A young soul is somebody who has, I'm going to say, 25 to 50 lives that they've already lived. An older soul, middle-aged soul, is going to have 50 to 100. An old soul, a really old soul, is going to have maybe 200 and up. So you can have past lives, and you're darn right. You're going to start remembering those past lives, even when you're a young soul. But that's not what the number really meant. As you know, I think in the video, I may have said that, but that video, that video was from a class. And the intent when I put the video out for this, we didn't redo that video just for this free class. I just put it out there, but I sent a telepathic message that said a number between 1 and 9 will reveal the developmental level of your consciousness in this lifetime. So that's what the number meant. So I think it's really good for those of you who have said in the list here that you do remember some past lives. You should write those down and make a note and try to organize them in terms of, this is the oldest one that I've remembered. This is one, if you remember a past life, let's say where you were, if you were in the U.S. and you were in the Civil War, but then you remember being, alive in China, and it seemed like 10,000 years ago. That's an older life. So it's put them, as you write them down, put them on loose leaf paper if you can, so that you can put them in order. Okay. It's really good to remember your past lives. They have such useful information in them. We don't really talk about past lives in Intuition 1. I talk about that in Intuition 5. So you might consider taking that class, because it's not only do we talk about it, but we do past life work. So, okay. Not sure how to say this next name. Kipichi? Kipichi, you asked a question that didn't make any sense. I couldn't give it any context. It starts out, when you're the watcher of your movie. I'm like, okay, there's something missing there. So then you said, so when you see it, it's already past. And for my knowing you can't change the past, or am I wrong? Please respond. And when you're the watcher, not the doer, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. I can't answer that question, Kip. It's not, it doesn't say anything. To me, it says that you have a belief in something about changing the past and about being the doer, about being the watcher. From my point of view, that's all confusion. A lot of people in intuition, when they start, they come in with all kinds of confusing, conflicting, contradictory ideas. That doesn't work. Okay. So hopefully you will be more clear the next time you ask a question. I hope. Okay. Okay. Next we have P.A. York. And P.A. York says, my answers, and this is a common thing that happens, my answers to number 7 and 8 were crisscrossed as I wrote them down, which was interesting. How do the elemental archetypes of our natal chart show up within our respective abilities to visualize, hear, and feel? Here's what I'm getting as an example. Aquarius is air. So those with an air sign likely hear because of tones and frequencies. Okay? So that first comment you made, hey, P.A. York, the answers to 7 and 8 were crisscrossed. That indicates that you have precognitive abilities. Happens frequently. I'm asking this question and people are answering the next question. And then when I get to that question, they get the answer to the first one. So, yeah, that just says that you're precognitive. That's a gift. Okay, then you say, how do the elemental archetypes of our natal chart show up within our respective abilities to visualize, hear, and feel? I have no idea. Okay. I don't deal in astrology. I don't know anything about astrology. I don't know anything about charts, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that you will find is that I keep bringing people down. It's like, put all of your old ideas aside. You don't know enough yet. I hope this doesn't come across as insulting, but you don't have enough knowledge or experience yet to know where you can start to cross propagate or pollinate ideas about other systems that show you how to look inside. And astrology is one of those. So, put your religious beliefs aside. You can go back and pick up what you think is important once you have unfolded your consciousness. Put your astrology aside. If you're a really experienced astrologer, you might not have to put it aside. You begin to see how to use it better, how to use the astrology better. But I don't cross-pollinate. This is pure and simple knowing from within, practical, common sense, grounded, and absolutely phenomenal in terms of its ability to be helpful and to be able to navigate your life with success and make the choices that don't blow up in your face. So, yeah, what you're saying sounds very interesting, but I couldn't even begin to answer that. Okay. Next we have show me a sign. Says number 5, show me a sign got green peace. Not really sure what that insight means. And then he or she also said, I had 2 birds and 2 bugs come. Do we go with the first? Yes, typically you do. Okay, when we talk about like number 5 in the questions that we were asking was to visualize an animal, and that's your animal totem. And if you got green peas, that typically is going to be something that's not related to an animal, except in a really, you can make some connections if you stretch, and everything is related. That's the first thing that comes to mind. It's an organization that was trying to, at one point, I think, save the whales, save the dolphins, or something like that. And the guy who started it left and said, "I'm not having anything to do with you. This has become an ugly game." So it may be that you are very, very sensitive to animals and animal protection, and would love to see animals have some rights, like people have rights. We're not there yet as a civilization, but we could get there. There are people who are highly disturbed, and I'm one of them, at how we treat our animals. Oh my gosh. So that answer, number 5, Greenpeace, that just may indicate that you love all animals. There may be some other connection buried in there. I'm not sure what that might be, but just hold on to that for now. Sometimes that will be more clear later on. The other thing, if you take green and peace, green is the world of Mother Nature. Is there peace in Mother Nature? Is Mother Nature at peace with the humans on this planet? Yeah, there may be some kind of message there. The 2 birds and the 2 bugs, go with the first one, but don't forget about the second one. You obviously have a primary and a secondary. Okay. Okay. And the first one will be your primary. Okay. Good job. Show me a sign. So Tat Ledunya says, number 1, there's several questions here. I kept falling asleep during this exercise. I had to listen 3 to 4 times. What does that mean? That means you're tired. I tell people, by gosh, if I'm doing an exercise and you fall asleep, you needed that sleep way more than you needed anything from me or any kind of teaching or any kind of insight. That is, people are tired nowadays. Take care of yourself first. That's what that means. You can always come back and listen again. Okay? And yes, people often do have to come back 3 or 4 times. Okay? But you need to get some sleep to relax. Okay? Number 2, for bird, spider, and animal, I chose the last ones I had seen in my yard since the exercise was moving so fast. Does that really mean they are my true mascots or totem animals? That may be your totem animal at this point. Okay? That totem may change. So just hang on to what you got. The bird, the spider, and the animal, whatever it was. If you do the exercise again, and it sounds like maybe, you had to stop and think a little bit and there wasn't time to stop and think. And that's on purpose. But that if you do the exercise again, say a month from now, see what you get then. Okay. Let's see. So, and those animals were the cardinal, the spider, and the bunny. I just want to say something about each one of those. So this is a book that this is one of the books, Animal Speak, that I would recommend that you have on your bookshelf. There's not too many books that are really worth spending money on. This is one of them. It's by Ted Andrews. He says the cardinal is, or the symbol of renewed vitality through recognizing self-importance. Okay, so the cardinal is really an important message, or has an important message for you. You are important, and that is something that you need to recognize with humility. Okay, the spider is the symbol of the person. The spider weaves a web. And so the symbolism of the spider is the web of life. And it symbolizes the ability to build or to weave a new world, weave a new reality, weave yourself, reweave yourself, and to move to a higher level of power, wisdom, and grace with full intuition. So the spider is a wonderful, wonderful totem. And then you have the rabbit. Whoops, hang on a second here. So the rabbit means that you have a tremendous amount of energy. And the way the rabbit moves is in these big jumps, big leaps, hops. That rabbit can hop like 8 or 9, 10 feet in one hop when they're scared. But that ability to make big leaps indicates that there's an ability to make big changes all of a sudden and without any warning. And that sometimes takes people by surprise. So that's, just be aware that those are the meanings of the rabbit, the cardinal, and the spider. Okay. Then you say, once I really think about it, I would choose the peacock, the butterfly, and the dog. For the number, then next she says, for the number, I chose a number that is significant to me. It's a low number. I think my true age would be more than that. It might be, but your developmental age in terms of the development of consciousness may be something different. And if you've got a low number, let's say you chose a 3 or 2 or even a 1, that just indicates that you have an exciting opportunity ahead of you, all kinds of good stuff waiting to learn. So don't worry about that. Number 4, Totley says, this exercise definitely went fast for me. I felt like I couldn't keep up at times. Does that mean my brain is too slow? No, not really. It just means that you're not quite flexible enough to get out of the box. That's what the exercise, is to test. Are you able to get out of the box and see something totally different? Something that you wouldn't see or wouldn't think you have seen before? Can you hear something that you're not in the presence of, like a creak or thunder or whatever? So you will get more flexible as you go along. So don't worry about it. Just be aware of how you are. No need to feel like, I didn't do well. There's no such thing as not doing well. You do what you do because that's where you're at. No apologies, nothing, no embarrassment, nothing like that required. You're learning about you. You'll come a long way over the course of this class. Okay, next we have Bloom 3 asking, is it okay to do this exercise more than once? Yes, it is. You can do it every day if you like. You can do it every week. Will I hear and feel or envision always the same? Nope. Nope. No, why? Because consciousness is very dynamic and you change. And so the messages that you would get, the animals, the totems, etc., are those for that moment in time. People are forever afraid of change. I'm telling you, by the time you get done with this class, you're not going to be very afraid of change. You're going to see how valuable that change is. So learning is changing. You change how you see the world. You change how you understand. You change what you know and the kinds of things you know and what importance or relevance that has to the rest of the world. So this is, don't worry. Don't get caught up in feeling like you can only do it once and that you have to have the same answers all the time. That's the worst thing you could do. I mean, it may come up that, let's say that Tatladunya gets the bird, the cardinal, the spider, and the bunny every time. That's okay. But when yours changes, that means you have changed. And that totem for that moment, there's a message there for you. Okay? And that's why this book, Animal Speak, is just so handy. Okay? Okay, last, this is from Gulaga. I love that name, Gulaga 6336. Please let us know which books you read to help you with your Kundalini experience. I'm going to say, first of all, I already mentioned one book by Gopi Krishna, but beyond that, there were no books to help me. 45 years ago, I found one book, talked about Kundalini. It was worded so terribly, so mysteriously. It was like they're talking about something, but they don't want to say what it is. They don't want to be right out there with what is this? What happened? What does this mean? Et cetera, et cetera. And there were no books. I mean, there were metaphysical bookstores. I did read a book by Charles Ledbetter, and it was about chakras. And maybe it was by Charles Ledbetter and Annie Besant. At that point in my life, I was not really able to make heads or tails out of what they were saying. It's like, they're talking about what? This thing called a chakra? What's a chakra? I was a total novice, no background in anything metaphysical at all. And I was terrified of that whole field because I thought it was witches and witchcraft. When it happens to you, you have to change your mind about some things. So it's about power. It's about consciousness. Consciousness is the greatest power in the world. Hands down, bar none. So there were no books really to help me. It's why I decided to write a book of my own. My attitude was, oh my God, what if there's somebody else out there that's struggling with this? Maybe this will help. It was something that I wrote and rewrote every year for like 10 or 12 years. Why? Because I kept learning and understanding more at a deeper and deeper level. And even then, when I put out my 20-year edition of The Evolving Human, be sure you get the 20-year edition one. At that point, it had fallen into place. And I can't say it fell into place. I have managed to finally pull it into place. It wasn't easy, but it was rewarding. I understand now. So I have collected books. The books by Hank Wesselman, I think, are very good starters. There are other books on the list, the books by Carlos Castaneda, Castaneda. Castaneda was, I forget, he got a PhD in something. Maybe, I don't think it was archaeology. That was Hank Wasserman. But anyway, Castaneda Carlos got a PhD, and later that was revoked. It was decided that he was a fraud. When that pronouncement, when I discovered that, it provoked a huge crisis in me. I went back through all of his books and reread every single one, looking for where are the fraudulent moments. And it wasn't. Most of those books are really quite true. And I have found that what he was talking about those things are useful and accurate, especially the things that Don Juan was teaching. And I have my own teaching from Don Juan. So the books that Castaneda wrote are helpful. He was trying to learn about plants, medicinal plants. I think that was what his PhD was. But he cheated or lied in a couple places, and you can't do that. You absolutely cannot do that. Don't do that to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. Don't fool yourself. All of it is there. Castaneda, you know what I think his big flaw was? He wanted power over others. And Don Juan was trying to get him to understand what the proper use of power was. And he never got it. Carlos never got it. And then he died of liver cancer at a very young age. So, he died, he was living the wild life. I think he had 3 wives living in a house in California, eating poorly. You can't, anyway. He had a rough, stressful life. However, those first 3 books that Castaneda wrote, those are very, very good. The 4th book, also very good. There's a couple spots where he exaggerated a little bit in that 4th book. But those first few are really worth reading. Okay. So, in fact, I would say Gulagan, that the reason I've written books and have written them the way I wrote them was because I wanted to make up for the absolute, I'm going to call it absence or the shortage of books back then that were able to be helpful, really helpful. So, and a lot of the New Age stuff is not helpful at all. Talk about messing with people's minds. So that brings me to the end of our question and answer. This was all a result of the Rose, the Trumpet, and the Hot Day exercise. The next video will be released on Friday. And Friday, I forget what the date is, 22nd of November. And that will have some questions that we'll pick up, and I'll answer those after we get those questions picked up from your comments. That next exercise, it's really a lecture. It's not an exercise. It's not real long, but it's about the 4 enemies. And these are the enemies that people run into as they try to unfold their consciousness. So hopefully you'll see and be able to see that video, watch that video. And then if you have any questions, write them in the comments underneath. We'll get them. Okay. All right. Take care.